John Gotti, the untouchable Teflon Don. Step into the streets of 1980s New York City, a world where crime ruled the shadows, and one man reigned supreme, John Gotti. Known as the Teflon Don, Gotti's journey to power was paved with betrayal, violence, and an unrelenting grip on the Gambino crime family. In this gripping tale of secrecy, spectacle, and ultimate downfall, we unravel how one of the most infamous crime bosses lived a life of untouchable power, until it all came crashing down. John Joseph Gotti Jr. was born into a life far removed from the riches and power he would later command. His early life in the poverty-stricken Bronx shaped his hunger for dominance. Gotti was one of 13 siblings, raised in a family that constantly struggled to get by. By his early teen years, Gotti was running with street gangs, quickly making a name for himself. It wasn't long before petty crimes evolved into something darker. Larceny turned into hijacking trucks, and eventually, Gotti's ambition and ruthlessness caught the attention of the Gambino crime family, one of New York's most powerful mafia organizations. Gotti's entry into the mafia was no ordinary tale of dues paid over time. He was smart, calculating, and above all, fearless. It was this mixture of traits that placed him under the wing of Agnello della Croce, one of the Gambino family's most respected leaders. To understand John Gotti's rise, you first need to understand the institution he came to lead, the Gambino crime family. One of the infamous 5 families that ran organized crime in New York City, the Gambinos were a powerhouse of illegal operations. From loan sharking and gambling rackets to drug trafficking and murder for hire, they controlled millions of dollars in assets and countless lives. Under the leadership of Carlo Gambino, the family solidified its dominance. But as Carlo's health declined in the 1970s, the mantle of leadership became both a prize and a dangerous curse. It was into this volatile environment that John Gotti would emerge as the heir apparent, willing to stake everything, including human lives, for a shot at the throne. In the early years, John Gotti made his mark as a loyal mobster who wasn't afraid to get his hands dirty. He worked as a soldier, taking on whatever jobs his superiors handed down: extortion, theft, and even murder. His big break came as he moved up the ranks and became a captain running operations out of Queens, New York. But it wasn't just his strict adherence to the mafia code that set Gotti apart. It was his unshakable confidence and ability to win favor among his peers. His reputation was sealed after orchestrating the murder of Irish mobster James McBratney, a dangerous step that displayed both his loyalty and his willingness to act decisively. While Gotti had enemies, the turning point in his career came with an ally, Paul Castellano, the man who became Gambino boss after Carlo Gambino's death in 1976. Castellano's leadership was deeply unpopular within the family, particularly among street-level soldiers like Gotti, who believed Castellano was out of touch. In 1985, Gotti made a bold and shocking move. With power slipping from his grasp, Castellano hadn't seen the threat brewing beneath him. On December 16, 1985, as Castellano exited his car outside Sparks Steakhouse in Manhattan, gunmen loyal to Gotti opened fire. While murders of mafia bosses weren't unheard of, the brazen public assassination brought unprecedented media attention. Gotti, decked out in designer suits with a winning smile, absorbed it all. He wasn't just a boss. He became a figure of fascination, a man who seemed too daring, too untouchable, and too powerful to be stopped. With Castellano dead, John Gotti became the boss of the Gambino crime family, ushering in a new era defined by audacity and flair. As head of the most powerful crime syndicate in New York, Gotti controlled racketeering, extortion, gambling, construction deals, and more. But what made his rule legendary wasn't just the scale of his empire, it was his public persona. Unlike the mafia bosses before him who preferred to operate from the shadows, Gotti basked in the limelight. He became the darling of tabloid headlines, photographed in custom-tailored suits and parading around New York City like a celebrity. His confidence, charisma, and court victories earned him the media nickname the Teflon Don, due to an almost supernatural ability to escape conviction. One court case after another, law enforcement could not make the charges stick. It seemed nothing could touch Gotti. The general public, fascinated by his defiance and charm, began romanticizing him as a kind of outlaw hero. But the FBI and other federal authorities were far from charmed. With Gotti's crimes piling up and his flaunting of authority growing bolder, the FBI doubled down on its efforts to bring him down. The challenge? Gotti's ability to silence witnesses and his control over juror loyalty. Time after time, key witnesses disappeared, and jurors reported being too fearful to convict. The FBI's shift in strategy was both calculated and revolutionary. Instead of focusing solely on eyewitness testimony or physical evidence, agents adapted techniques to monitor Gotti's notoriously secretive meetings. Wiretaps were placed in homes, businesses, and even Gotti's social club, leading to a treasure trove of recordings. As the FBI closed in, Gotti seemed unshaken, doubling down on his persona as untouchable. But unknown to him, an ally was about to become his biggest enemy. Salvatore "Sammy the Bull" Gravano was John Gotti's trusted underboss, and the man who carried out many of his orders. For years, Gravano helped secure Gotti's power through calculated hits and unwavering loyalty. But cracks began to form as Gotti's arrogance and media attention took a heavy toll on their partnership. When Gravano was arrested alongside Gotti during the FBI's final takedown, Gotti made a fatal error. Secret recordings revealed Gotti blaming Gravano for several murders during private conversations. Feeling betrayed and left to take the fall, Gravano turned informant. In a jaw-dropping twist, Gravano testified against Gotti in court, providing first-hand accounts of the Gambino family's operations. Gravano's betrayal marked a seismic shift, not just for the case, but for the mafia itself. In 1992, after years of evading justice, John Gotti faced his toughest trial yet. Armed with recorded tapes, cooperating witnesses like Gravano, and ironclad surveillance evidence, federal prosecutors finally had the ammunition to bring down the Teflon Don. For Gotti, the trial was no longer a spectacle he could control. The recordings laid bare his criminal empire, and Gravano's testimony exposed secrets that no amount of intimidation could suppress. After an intense courtroom battle, Gotti was convicted on 13 counts, including murder, racketeering, and obstruction of justice. On June 23, 1992, he was sentenced to life in prison without parole. The Teflon coating that had deflected countless charges cracked wide open. Gotti's life behind bars was far from glamorous. Stripped of his power and control, he struggled to maintain influence from within prison walls. Gotti's health declined, and by 2002, cancer claimed his life. His death marked the end of one of the most dramatic chapters in organized crime. Yet, even from beyond the grave, Gotti left behind a legacy that refused to fade. His story permeates pop culture, inspiring countless films, TV shows, and books. Decades after his reign, John Gotti remains both a symbol of power and the dangers of unchecked arrogance. To some, he's remembered as a calculating gangster who commanded respect through fear and cunning. To others, Gotti was a man whose taste for limelight blinded him to the inevitable forces closing in. Where does the legend truly lie? Was John Gotti the ultimate criminal mastermind, or was he simply a man who played a dangerous game for too long? One thing is clear. In the world of organized crime, there may never be another like him. His story is a cautionary tale, a grim reminder that even the untouchable can fall.